What's going on, guys? Sticks here with the Token Minorities, bringing you another deck on Pokemon TCGO, and today I am ridiculously excited because Guardians Rising came out a day early. They kept saying over and over, it is going to be May 5th, it is going to be May 5th, it's going to be May 5th, but then it's available on TCGO on the 4th. Well, first of all, May the 4th be with you. Just saying. I just wanted to throw that out there, just let you guys know that I hope that the 4th is with you all. But yeah, I mean, Guardians Rising came out a day early, and for those of you who have been watching the channel recently, you might be thinking, wait, Sticks, Guardians Rising came out, and the first deck you're doing is one centered around the new Trevenant. I thought you said over and over that you were going to do one with Turtonator. And yes, I did say that, but unfortunately, all of the codes that I ordered are coming in tomorrow, so I had a very limited amount of stuff to work with in order to get a deck out on the day that it was released. So Trevenant was the one that I was able to get the most of, and so I was like, you know what, let's just do a Trevenant video. It's on my list anyway, I might as well do that. So yeah, sorry, not Turtonator. Turtonator's probably going to be coming out like tomorrow, Saturday, or Sunday, depending on when I can get the cards. But for today, we are doing a deck centered around Trevenant and Vileplume. And before I get into the deck, just a reminder to you guys that if you like this video or found it helpful, please leave a like, drop a comment, and click that subscribe button. It helps us out quite a bit and lets us do more cool stuff like this for you guys. And as for the question of the day, I mean, you guys pretty much can already tell what my question is going to be. I mean, considering that Guardians Rising has come out on TCGO today, what cool stuff have you guys pulled, if you've been able to pull anything cool? And if you had to ask me, I would say that the coolest thing that I pulled was a hyper rare Coma OGX, and you guys might ask yourself, wait, Sticks, or ask me rather, wait, Sticks, I see that full art Lele right there. I know you have a full art Lele. Why is that not the coolest thing you pulled? Well, that's because I kind of had to trade for the Lele. What I pulled was really nothing particularly helpful, just a bunch of good, like, uncommons and rares and stuff like that. I didn't get any good, like, ultra rares, secret rares, that type of thing. However, with my backstock, I was able to get a Lele, which is very crucial for 99% of decks at this point. So, I mean, yeah, I have a Lele, but hyper rare Coma OGX was the coolest thing that I pulled. So let me know what you guys pulled in the comments section below. I would love to hear the type of things you guys ran into on this first day of Guardians Rising. Now, onto the deck. Like I said, it is centered around the new Trevenant with Poltergeist. I mean, it's 120 HP in grass type, meaning that it can take advantage of the omnipresent Forest of Giant Plants, which is literally everywhere in this format right now. I mean, this thing is way too good. Look, Decidueye Vileplume, Lurantis Vileplume. I mean, Forest of Giant Plants is broken. Like, I'm just going to say it right now. It's a busted card. But I decided to use it, the new Trevenant, with Vileplume, because Trevenant and Vileplume just seem to work together. Like, they seem to be perfect for each other. Poltergeist for a DCE. So first of all, it's a DCE, which means that you don't have to run a lot of energy in the deck. Poltergeist does 30 times the number of trainer cards your opponent has in their hand. No, that does not say item cards. That says trainer. So that means items, stadiums, what are these called? Supporters, thank you. So items, stadiums, supporters, tools, all of those power up Poltergeist. And what thing keeps items and other stuff in your opponent's hand? Well, that is Vileplume. So these guys just have a natural synergy. And one cool thing I found is that you can pair this with Trevenant Break very, very easily. Just kind of slap a Trevenant Break on there, give it a different typing, give it a little bit of extra bulk, and also be able to use Silent Fear to spread around damage while you have the item lock. So in my testing with this deck, I came across a few clunky things, which is why some of the numbers might be a little bit weird, but I'll explain those as I go. But yeah, in testing, this deck is ridiculous when you can get it set up. But as for the numbers of Pokemon, I'm only running 19 just because I want to try to get as consistent of a setup as possible. Get a Vileplume out, get a couple Trevenant down, or a couple, yeah, but one at the very least, and then maybe a Shaymin or a Lele. But starting off, we have Shaymin with setup, and I'm going to go ahead and say that this format is going to be more Lele focused than Shaymin focused. However, this deck is very much a turn 1 explosion deck, so it needs that non-supporter draw more than it needs like the Lele searching for a supporter, and this deck doesn't run many tech supporters. I mean, it really only runs one. So Lele, while definitely useful and definitely, I'm not going to say necessary, but definitely very, very helpful in this deck, Shaymin is more necessary than Lele, but again, stock up on Lele's. Those things are going to be ridiculous and are going to be pretty format defining in my opinion. But yeah, 2 Shaymin for that turn 1 explosion for setup and stuff like that. And also Sky Return, I've actually Sky Returned more with this deck than any other deck that I've been running, which is kind of weird, but at the same time, kind of cool because you save DCEs, get a reuse Shaymin, stuff like that. 2/2/2 of Oddish through Vileplume just for that item lock, be able to try to avoid having all of these guys prized or having one of the line prized, which would leave us in a bad situation, so that's why we're running 2 of each. And then my Trevenant line. Now, I started off with a 4-4-3 of Phantump, Trevenant, and Trevenant Break. I only ran 3 Trevenant Break just because, I mean, Silent Fear, I've only used it a couple times. The majority of times you're going to be using Poltergeist as your attack just because, I mean, it destroys things, but Silent Fear is still definitely useful, as well as having that 160 HP, just a little bit extra bulk. But I found that I had the Trevenant Break way too many times, and I rarely needed the bulk or the Silent Fear to where it would lead to me wanting to run 3 Trevenant Break. So I decided that the payoff for adding more consistency cards in lieu of another Trevenant Break was worth it. However, definitely try it out for yourself. This 4-4-2 line, I found that I definitely have what I need when I need, and it doesn't clunk up the deck as much. But again, my opinion, try this out for yourselves and let me know what type of numbers you guys are running. And then we have 1 Lele because, well, first of all, Energy Drive. 20 times, I mean, it's basically X-Ball, Arrow Ball, all those good attacks, like all those ridiculously good attacks. We're running DCEs in the deck anyway. We can take advantage of that. Wonder Tag, being able to just grab any supporter that we want when we play Tapu Lele down. And then Tapu Cure, just heal all damage from 2 of your bench Pokemon. This deck doesn't have a GX attack, so Lele, I mean, fits that role perfectly as well for a single Psychic Energy, so it's not like we even have to run a higher number of Psychic Energy. That being said, I've never had to use Tapu Cure GX, but I mean, hey, it's an option. Tapu Lele runs on DCEs and Psychic Energy, both of which Trevenant runs on, so these two go together, and Tapu Lele doesn't clunk up the deck at all. And okay, I could talk forever about how much this card is going to impact the meta, but I'm going to move on just because, I mean, you guys want to see this deck playing. You don't want to see me just talking and talking and talking. As for the items, 4-4 of Acro Bike and Trainers Mail. I initially started with only 2 Acro Bike, but I sacrificed, I got rid of 1 Trevenant and 1 Energy from my testing in order to get 4 Acro Bike. Just keep consistency going, get the best setup possible and most consistent as possible. And I actually really like the 4-4 of Trainers Mail and Acro Bike just to go through the deck. We have 3 Level Ball to search out Oddish, Gloom, and Phantump. You might be thinking, well, why are you running a heavy number of Level Ball? You only have 3 things that can be searched with it. Yeah, but it also helps thin the deck a little bit. It helps you search out Oddish, Gloom, helps you get Phantumps into play, all that stuff. So 3 Level Ball is actually really, really nice. And then I'm only running 1 Revitalizer. I skipped over a card, but that's because I wanted to talk about this, which segues into the other card that I'm running. But Revitalizer, put 2 grass Pokemon from your discard pile into your hand. That's for if you have to like Ultra Ball or Sycamore away a bunch of like Trevenant or Vileplume when you don't have a Forested Giant Plant Sump, or you just don't want to item lock everything yet. And then a new card which actually helps this deck a ton is Rescue Stretcher. You can either put a Pokemon from your discard pile back into your hand, or shuffle 3 Pokemon from your discard pile into your deck. That is ridiculous because now you can actually just Ultra Ball away a Shaymin and be able to reuse it later. This especially helps with Trevenant Break being a Psychic type because you can't Revitalizer for it, but you can Rescue Stretcher for it. And also, Rescue Stretcher, while it does get a Pokemon back into your hand from your discard pile, which is ridiculously useful in this deck, you can also just put 3 back into your deck if you run into a situation where you're like, well, I discarded way too much. I don't necessarily need anything in my hand, but I'd like to have these back in the deck. Rescue Stretcher works for that as well. In fact, I might even recommend running 2 of these and no Revitalizer, but again, just my opinion, try it out and let me know. 4 Ultra Ball to guarantee get what we want when we want. And then as for these supporters, 4-3 of N and Sycamore, just for draw support. We don't have VS Seeker in this deck, so you had to run a little bit higher number of draw supporters. 2 Lysandre, I did have 3, but again, I sacrificed having another Lysandre for more consistency. And this deck list is actually the result of a bunch of testing. So the numbers might seem a little off from what you're used to seeing for this archetype. However, this was just my personal preference and what I was comfortable with. Try the usual stuff out for yourself. Try the weird stuff out for yourself. Just make the deck your own. That's what I did. So 2 Lysandre, 3 N for Sycamore, and then 1 Tech Olympia for, like, in case you play Vileplume down without a Float Stone, which I highly recommend against, but there are some situations where you have to in order to try to get the best setup possible. So Olympia is there just as kind of an emergency, and also it can be searched out with Tapu Lele. So if your opponent Lysandre's up your non-Float Stone Vileplume, you can play down a Tapu Lele, search out the Olympia, and then get that thing back onto your bench where it belongs. 3 Float Stone, wanted to run 4, but I sacrificed 1 Float Stone for more consistency as well. Again, just my opinion. And then 4 DCE and 3 Psychic. DCEs for Boom, 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 and can be attached to Vileplume in a pinch if it gets Lysandre active. And then 3 Psychic Energy, mostly for Silent Fear, but heck, you can also use it for Tapu Cure, retreating Tapu Lele, retreating Shaymin, all that good stuff. So yeah, that is the deck. Fairly straightforward. Let's go ahead and see this deck in action as my first Guardians Rising deck. Alrighty, we have found one against Marzal with a, well, I mean, honestly, it looks kind of like my expanded Turbo Darkrai deck, but we do lose the coin flip, meaning we will go second. That's a bit of a bummer, but, I mean, it's not too huge of a deal, because, I mean, my opponent can't item lock me. However, he will be able to see exactly what I'm running, considering there's a Trevenant Break and a Vileplume, so pretty straightforward with that. And wow, once again, so even after cutting my Trevenant Breaks, or cutting one of my Trevenant Breaks, I still end up with quite a bit. And oddly enough, this deck has a very unfortunate habit of mulliganing. I mean, I've run decks with less basics, and I still haven't mulliganed as much as I have with this deck. I mean, yes, I know it's completely random and it will happen, but it's just kind of funny. But either way, we are going to mulligan twice. Hopefully we don't start out with a solitary Shaymin, just because, I mean, that'd make me cry. Just like, plain and simple, that would just make me cry. But let's see, are we going to mulligan again? And no. Okay, so we start with something that I can... Okay, I can work with this, I think. I mean, the biggest thing is I'll have a forest. So all I'll need to do is just get the pokes out. If I can somehow get drawn to a Trevenant, then I'll be able to get a Trevenant breakup immediately, which, I mean, is really nice. And we see Yveltal Mew. Is this... This could be Turbo Dark with Mew as a tech, just to kind of give a little bit more type coverage, I guess. Like, just be able to hit Psychics for weakness as well. My opponent just plays an energy and Nest Balls. So, what's he going to bring out? Because, I mean, the thing is, he's obviously not going for Shaymin right now, or at least I hope he's not going for Shaymin with Nest Ball, because I've seen too many people just Nest Ball for a Shaymin, and then they forfeit. I mean, that's what happens on the lower ladder a little bit. But we do see the Fighting Fury Belt go down onto the Mew, and what is really, really cool about my opponent playing Mew, for me anyway, is that Trevenant Break is going to be able to hit that thing for weakness. So that's another thing that is so awesome. I draw into another Force of Giant Plants, not necessarily what I wanted, but I'll go with it. And okay, what I can do, Acro Bike, grab the Float Stone, and then, I mean, I'm going to Sycamore my hand away anyway. So let's go ahead and grab that Trevenant, play that down, go ahead and get a Trevenant Break up turn 1, to where all I need is an Oddish. Like, oh, not an Oddish, I need a Vileplume, but I'm going to Sycamore instead of N, just because, I mean, I want to play this out a little bit more, and wow. So I get some really, really nice stuff. I should be able to item lock my opponent this first turn, or at least hit him with the Poltergeist. At the very least, I'll be able to Poltergeist. But let's go ahead and Ultra Ball, get rid of the Sycamore and the Trainer's Mail to grab a Gloom. There's 1 Float Stone left in my deck, so I have to be very careful. Let's play the Gloom down, slap the DCE onto the active Trevenant, play the Shaymin, draw into a fresh hand of 6 cards, and okay. So if I can get an Ultra Ball, that would just be absolutely fantastic. I get a Rescue Stretcher. Do I have any Vileplumes in my discard pile? I do not. Well, that's unfortunate. I mean, I'm going to grab that anyway. Just thin out my deck a little more, increase my odds of getting an Ultra Ball. And, okay, I get an Acro Bike. Can I get an Ultra Ball off of this or a Vileplume? And I get neither. But what I do get is another DCE. Throw the Trevenant into the discard pile. And, I mean, you know what? I'll be able to get 2 Trevenant breaks up this turn, which I can't complain about at all. I mean, just grab that Trevenant, evolve the Phantump into the Trevenant, and Trevenant into Trevenant breaks. So, unfortunately, did not get the turn 1 item lock, but what I can do is go ahead and Poltergeist, hit my opponent for 90 damage, just 10 short, and I could have been able to Silent Fear for the knockout next turn. But I do have the Lysandre, meaning I will be able to Lysandre up that Mew and knock it out next turn with a Poltergeist from my Psychic Trevenant break, which is pretty cool, in my opinion. But yeah, so, I mean, we got set up. Unfortunately, didn't get the turn 1 Vileplume, which is what this deck wants. However, I mean, again, I have 2 Trevenant breaks up. I'm not complaining. As long as my opponent doesn't just get a bunch of items. He does... Okay, so he's starting to see what Poltergeist does, so he's going to go ahead and Escape Rope. I'm going to go into my other Trevenant, just because I will be able to potentially knock out whatever my opponent brings up. Actually, never mind, the Mew has a Fighting Fury Belt. I was wrong. And the Escape Ropes again. So, in this case, I'm going to go into my Gloom, just let that take an Oblivion Wing. And then I can always just... I can Lysandre up, stall a little bit, or what I think I'm actually going to do if I don't get a Draw Supporter, which I don't. I get a Force of Giant Plants, which, I mean, that's fine. I get to counter his Stadium. But what I can do right here is... I think I'm going to Sky Return, because my opponent obviously has nothing going on. And yeah, I'm just going to bring up the Remoraid, make my opponent not be able to attack. I mean, at the very least, I'll be able to knock out this Remoraid with a Silent Fear next turn if I'm able to draw it into a Psychic Energy. But yeah, let's just throw up the Trevenant there. Not putting up the Gloom in case my opponent gets another Reverse Valley and like a Float Stone or something like that to where he can knock me out with an Oblivion Wing. But I'm in a phenomenal position this turn. And yeah, my opponent just concedes right there. What I could have done is play the Shaymin down, hopefully drawn into a Psychic Energy or some means of getting one, which would have allowed me to Silent Fear, set the, knock out the Remoraid, put the Yveltal in range of being knocked out the next turn, while just getting damage onto the Mew. So, I mean, didn't get a perfect setup in this match, but we did get a very good one. But again, way too short. Let's go ahead and try to find another one with this deck. Alrighty, we found another one against a Desui with a, I didn't even see, I think it was like a grass, water, lightning deck, and unfortunately we lose the coin flip again, so we will not be able to get that turn 1 item lock on my opponent. And we do see the Rowlet coin coming out from my opponent, which is actually kind of scary, because that's potentially indicative of him running grass as well, and if you're running grass, you're probably running Vileplume, and I don't want to get Vileplume turn 1, especially with how good my hand is. Wow. I mean, I was just rambling, but this is a good hand. My opponent does... Okay, so this is a Lurantis. That's probably a Lurantis Evolutions deck with Vileplume. Well, hopefully that means his deck is clunkier, and he won't be able to item lock me turn 1, because, I mean, I like my hand. I really like my hand. I can Ultra Ball, get rid of, like, the Sycamore and the Lysandre to grab, like, an Oddish, or... I just have so many different plays that I can go for, and especially the fact that my opponent's playing Lurantis means that he probably has Force to Giant Plants, which is great for me, because that means I don't have to play it down, and I don't have to search it out, and Force to Giant Plants just becomes a potential discard fodder card for me, which would be very, very nice. My opponent plays down an Eevee, discards a Fire Energy and a Water Energy. So I've actually never seen the actual energy used in an Evolutions deck. I mean, yeah, I've seen it in actual, like, decks that revolve around, like, Vengeance Flareon and stuff like that, but I haven't seen somebody use, like, Grass and Water Energy in a Stage 1 Evolutions deck, so that's really kind of cool. My opponent will be able to probably just Ultra Ball for a Shaymin. I'm going to guess that's what they're going to go for, because they want to get a little bit more going. Got rid of 2 Grass Energy. And did they fail the Ultra Ball? They might have failed the Ultra Ball. Okay, and they just passed, so that's something. What I am immediately going to do is Ultra Ball, get rid of the Sycamore and the Lysandre to grab... Okay, so there's only 1 Oddish and 1 Gloom in my deck. There is a Lele and a Shaymin, but there's only 1 Shaymin, so I have to be conscientious of that. Let's grab the Shaymin. Level Ball for an Oddish. I mean, I would for a Phantump, but considering there's only one Oddish and one Gloom in my deck, I'm probably not going to draw into them. So I have to search them when I have the opportunity, and I get a Forest of Giant Plants. So that's great. I mean, at the very least, I'm probably going to be able to Poltergeist this Fomantis. And you know what? I just had a brain fart. I mean, my opponent grabbed a Flareon, it looked like. So, ooh, I even draw into the Gloom. So, forget what I was saying about not drawing into the Gloom, because I obviously just drew into Gloom. I have a Float Stone as well. I'm going to hold on to that for a second, see what I get off this Acro Bike. And, well, another Float Stone. So, I might as well, let's see. I'd be going through 3 Ultra Balls, so I don't think I want to discard. Actually, So first, let's Ultra Ball, get rid of the Float Stone and the Phantump. There's not another Shaymin, so I'm going to go ahead and grab the Lele. Because if I... So first off, let's Float Stone the Gloom. But if I Lele, do I want to grab a Sycamore or an N? I think N. That way I have... Well, first of all, I give my opponent more stuff in their hand, so Poltergeist can do more, but I also leave the Ultra Ball into my deck. That way I can potentially draw into it and evolve the Gloom into Vileplume. Unfortunately, I whiff. So I'm faced with a predicament here. Well, first of all, let's just Level Ball. I mean, I think there might be like one Phantump left in the deck, yeah. So there's only one Phantump. Might as well grab that, get another one on the bench at the very least. That way, if my opponent counters my Stadium, I can't imagine that they would, I'd be able to evolve into a Trevenant and Poltergeist next turn. So here's the situation. I could retreat into Lele and not X-Ball, Energy Drive, which would knock out the Fomantis, keep my Trevenant out of harm's way of potentially being knocked out next turn by like just a ridiculous drop of some sort. But I think the play is to just attach to the Trevenant, Poltergeist, and yeah, we're going to hit for 120 damage, knock out this Fomantis. And, I mean, we saw that my opponent had no draw support. Yeah, he will be able to search out a bunch of stuff. But you know what? That's going to be fine with me. As long as he doesn't, like, top deck a supporter, that we're going to be fine. And, well, I mean, that's... could be just as good as supported top decking. Trainers Mail gets an Ultra Ball, so... I mean, we saw in his hand that he had Trainers Mail, he had Level Ball, so my opponent's gonna be able to play it down their hand quite a bit, get a bunch of items out of there, and that's why I really wanted to have. That's why in this deck you really want the Vileplume up turn 1. Right now, people aren't as familiar with Guardians as they could be, so when they see a Phantump, they might not inherently know what the Trevenant is. So if you're able to lock your opponent from items and then get your Trevenant up, it's usually too late for them to be like, oh crap, well I'm just going to play every single item that I have, or every trainer that I have, that way my opponent can't just Poltergeist for a billion damage. So my opponent right here is going to Ultra Ball for a Shaymin. Oh man, that would have been so nice to have. That Vileplume would have been really nice, but I mean, I'm still in a great position. I'll be able to get another Phantump down, I'll potentially be able to Silent Fear this turn, and then I'll probably draw into a Vileplume off of my Sycamore. So, I mean, I'll get a turn 2 item lock, not nearly as strong as a first turn, especially when it gives my opponent the ability to play around to play around the fact that I rely on my opponent having trainer cards in their hand. But I mean, it's still, even if you try to play around it, under item lock, there's only so much you can do. So eventually my opponent's just going to get to a point where it's like, well, alright, he's just going to hit me for 150 damage, and apparently my opponent didn't draw into much of anything off of that because he does just concede. And that is the problem with this deck. Whenever you get good setups, your opponent is more than likely going to forfeit. So I'm going to have to get a bunch of matches with this deck to try to actually make it be a substantial live. But unfortunately, that's what happens. Get a good setup and your opponent forfeits, or you just don't draw anything and your opponent steamrolls you. But still, solid match. Again, didn't get a Vileplume, so let's go ahead and try to find another one with this deck. Alright, we've got another one against Marshall W with, well, looks like another Evolutions deck. So as long as we keep them from getting up the Flareon, we're going to be good. Because even though Trevenant Break changes our typing to Psychic, we are still weak to Fire. So we're a Psychic type, that's weak to Fire, which is something that you really don't see in the TCG at all. So it's kind of funny when that does happen. We do win the coin flip and we will get to go first. Okay, so this is good. Unfortunately, I'm just gonna have to like waste my supporter very early, and oh boy, This is an Umbreon Hammers deck, so Vileplume, you are going to be coming out turn 1. Like, there is no way I'm not gonna Vileplume turn 1. So yeah, I mean, I just have to do that before my opponent's able to get his hammers going. And unfortunately, I draw into my Vileplume, so need to rely on having Rescue Stretcher or Revitalizer later. Let's go ahead and get rid of N and Forest to grab... Let's just grab a Trevenant. I could grab a Gloom, but I mean, my Vileplumes are going to be discarded anyway, and I might as well just go ahead and get this guy evolved while I can. Sycamore, and then cross our fingers that we get a Rescue Stretcher or a Revitalizer or something. And I get some good stuff. So I get a Float Stone, which I'm immediately going to play on the Oddish. Acro Bike. Well, I get an Acro Bike or a Forest. I already have a Forest, so I'm just going to do that. And do I want to Ultra Ball immediately? Let's play Ultra Ball. Get rid of the Sycamore and the Psychic Energy to grab a Shaymin, just because I want to be able to get a DCE on later. Play the Phantump down. Acro Bike before Trainers Mail, just because, I mean, that maximizes what you're able to draw, and I'm glad that I grabbed the Trevenant earlier. And then Trainers Mail, see what we can get. Get nothing particularly good. Would have liked to drawn into one of those DCEs, but it is fine. Let's go ahead and evolve into a Trevenant Break, and then Shaymin for a fresh 6 cards. Hopefully something that we can get going, and... well, that works. I can even get another Trevenant going. Let's... Trainers Mail, get the Level Ball... and guys, okay, yep, turn 1. Turn 1 Vileplume. I'm going to be able to even get another Phantump down. I mean, this is... when I said ideal setup, this is what I had in mind. This is exactly what I had in mind, because I'll be able to get 2 actually Trevenant breaks up turn 1 and a Vileplume, and even a DCE and a Sycamore for next turn. So, I mean, yeah, my opponent just concedes. Again, that's what happens with this deck. Get a good setup, and your opponents will just kind of forfeit. So, yeah, again, I was not able to actually set up a Vileplume. I was going to get it set up, but I wasn't actually able to get it set up. So, once again, frustrating that I can't get good matches, but at least I'm showing off what the deck can do. Let's go ahead and try to find another one, hopefully a last one, with this deck. Alrighty, we found another one against, one very, very, very interesting name. I think I was making that, I think me and my friends were making that joke back when we were in, like, 2nd grade, 3rd grade. But either way, we do win the coin flip, so we will get to go first. And I start a lone Shaymin. So that's just, I mean, that's just plain unfortunate. That's what that is. I mean, on the bright side, I do have a Forest. I have plenty of ways of searching, but, and oh boy. So, looks like we're going to have Scumbag versus Scumbag, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, I completely deserve for running this deck. I'm going to Level Ball for an Oddish as opposed to a Phantump, because even though I have a Trevenant in my hand, I'm more likely to draw into a Phantump than the Oddish, so I just went ahead and did that. Get a DCE, and I have to get rid of my Olympia in the process, which is not something I necessarily like. Let's go ahead and grab the Forest, just in case we get something that we can Ultra Ball. Well, get an Ultra Ball, but I want the Level Ball instead. That way I can search for stuff later, and I still have a Shaymin in the deck, so I want to save that for after I Sycamore away my hand, so that I can potentially just Ultra Ball for the Shaymin and go from there. I'm able to get a turn 1 Trevenant. I will be able to actually get a turn 1 Vileplume if I want. So let's go ahead and grab the Gloom. Please Float Stone. Please Float Stone. Can I get a Shaymin or a... okay, so I'm just going to have to discard the Shaymin. See if I can Trainer's Mail into a Float Stone, because that would be ideal, and I do not. And unfortunately, the fact that I had to discard my Shaymin is bad. It's very bad. So what I am going to do right now is Ultra Ball, get rid of the Psychic and the Trevenant to grab... do you want to grab a Lele or a Trevenant Break? I think let's just go ahead and grab the Trevenant Break. I mean, might as well just get that thing out there, get a couple Stage 2s. And on the bright side, I mean, yes, I'm playing a Vileplume without a Float Stone, which is something I always tell you guys not to do. But in this situation, I think I'm actually okay, because, yeah, my opponent can Lysandre it up, but, oh, that's bad. So Really hope I draw into an energy, otherwise my Shaymin is stuck there, and my opponent more than likely will be able to just supporter lock me. And, well, there's the Float Stone, and unfortunately no energy. So my opponent plays the Rainbow down onto the Sableye. So, ladies and gentlemen, what you are about to see is a stall fest. I mean, yeah, okay, I mean, I literally just have to draw into an energy. Like, I have to top deck an energy. That is my only chance of getting anything going, because my Shaymin is stuck active and my attacker's on the bench. But once I get rid of the Sableye, I should be fine, just because, I mean, my opponent then will start attacking and he won't be able to do anything. So he does just limitation. Again, keeps me from being able to use supporters, and I get a Psychic Energy one turn too late. I would have liked that last turn so I could have retreated into my Trevenant and Poltergeisted, but unfortunately... Okay, my opponent ends me. I need a DCE. I play the energy onto the Vileplume. Luckily, my opponent will not be able to hammer it away, which I'm sure he plays. If you're playing Sableye, you gotta be playing Hammer. Unfortunately, I do not draw it. I get another Float Stone, which, I mean, again, where were you a couple turns ago? And I can evolve my Phantump into a Trevenant. So, I mean, if my opponent knocks out Vileplume, that means I'm just able to attack. I mean, that means I'm just able to use my items again, get other stuff set up, and go from there. So, I mean, my opponent's item locked, I'm supporter and item locked. However, I'm not too worried right now, because clearly my opponent doesn't have anything going. Otherwise, he wouldn't just be supporter locking me. And I have the ability at this point to just sit back and let my opponent continually limitation, because as soon as I get a DCE, that Sableye is going down, and the floodgates are going to be opening. And just as I say that, I top deck it. I'm able to retreat the Vileplume into my Trevenant, and yeah, I am worried about another potential Lysandre, but, I mean, this Sableye just gone. 180, so that means my opponent had 6 items, or 6 trainers in their hand, and now I am not under supporter lock anymore. Yeah, my opponent can hit me for potentially 120 damage if he gets another DCE, but that is where... Actually, no, he wouldn't even be able to knock me out with Deep Hurricane. So, I mean, fortunately, my opponent doesn't get that, but that's where Trevenant's bulk comes, the Trevenant break bulk comes into play. I could play the DCE onto something, but I think at this point, I'm just going to knock out the Lugia with my Trevenant break. 220 damage, take a couple prizes. I'm saving the Lysandre so that I can bring up whatever my opponent wants to play down that could potentially be a problem. And I mean, yeah, my opponent has to top deck a Lysandre to stop this stream from continuing, but I mean, I'm just in a great position, and yeah, my opponent sees it. I mean, I finally got a Vileplume set up, unfortunately not with the Float Stone, but I still got a Vileplume set up, able to go up against another lock deck, and fortunately I was able to draw out of it with those top decks of energy, able to retreat my Vileplume, and then Trevenant just steamrolls, and that's exactly what this deck does. Vileplume locks down your opponent, and then Trevenant literally will just steamroll through your opponent's entire field, just because they'll maybe be able to set up one thing, but you're able to just keep the trainers in their hand, just knock out whatever they decide to bring out. So this is a very cool deck. Not sure how meta it's going to be, but still a very cool deck. Thank you for watching, guys. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed Guardians Rising being out a day early and were able to take advantage of it. This is Styx, signing out. Why not? See you guys.